Send out the tweeters.
Send out the tweeters. We're talking GBs, y'all. Let's get it.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 3, the third live Gutenberg QA. It is back to your humble hosts, uh, myself, Joe Casabona, and my man Zac Gordon.
Howdy,
Zac,
y'all.
how are you?
I'm doing just peachy, man. How about yourself?
I am fantastic. Let me tell you, I ordered some new gear yesterday for better video editing. So hopefully, the or a later version of my Gutenberg course is going to be in just like beautiful 4K videos for those of you who want to watch it on your Apple TV or whatever.
It's going to be like fireside chat. You're going to feel like Joe's just there with you, calmly taking you through all the
Yeah,
Gutenbergs. I like
yeah,
it.
just it'll be awesome. So I'm very excited. There's also exciting news to talk about, and that is since the last time we got together, Gutenberg nested blocks. Is that right?
That is correct. We had the 2.2.0 update with the big one at the top of the list, nested blocks. Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about from new features and some of that. In fact, you know what? I should pull that up just so we could throw that in the chat for people to check out because that list is importante.
Yeah, definitely. And also, so I'm coming up on closing out my month of Gutenberg user tips. Um, I believe I use the hashtag Gutenberg tips on Twitter. Um, but yeah, so I'm coming up to a close on that, and I saw that you are starting up the developer tips again, right?
Isn't it synchronistic how the world works sometimes? That's right. First, I wanted to ask you how that went. You know, you have been doing a bunch. I've caught most of them. They look pretty good. And then, yeah, just with this new release, I think I got at least another week or two of tips to do. So I already have this whole week queued up and probably into next. Yeah, there's some important changes, but also new stuff.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, so going really well for me. Seems to be a pretty popular thing, and I believe that has been the main driver of I gained like I pretty much that, which is a pretty good rate of following. I think for me at least. So
Well, I think everybody doing their part to get it out there to folks, you know, what's coming, because what we forget being super close to this is that a lot of users don't know that anything's happening behind the scenes. So the more we can share that, the more we can get out, especially for users who are going to be interacting with it. And of course, the devs who need to prepare for it. I hope you're ready, y'all.
happening fast at a very fast clip. So
It
those I
is.
think those tips have been really helpful. I've really enjoyed the developer ones. I'm mostly developer as well, so I'm a developer as well. So I've been enjoying those tips. Sweet. So let's jump into it. We have a few questions that have been submitted. If you are watching the live stream right now, you can go ahead and say hello in the chat and leave a question, and we will grab it. Otherwise, you can always submit questions over at gutenberg.courses/ask us, and we will be sure to get to them as we do these things week to week. I should also say, before we get into the questions, that this and all of our live Q&As are sponsored by Give. They're over at Give WP plugin that allows you to take donations right on your WordPress site. They are very supportive of the community. They've been very supportive of us, and they're excellent, and they're free. They are a free plugin that lets you make through donations. So they have some paid add-ons. You should definitely check them out.
Yeah, big shout out to Give. Thanks for helping us out. And of course, just doing awesome things. And we should also throw out that some of the folks from Give have been involved with doing a whole other series of Gutenberg Q&A interviews with developers. I think they've even, if it hasn't happened yet, they've got Matt Mullenweg on the board there to talk to. So Give is doing a lot more than just rocking the cool plugin scene. So shout out to them. And of of course, a huge thank you. And if you want to give to the Joe Children College Fund, we have a little give donation up on gutenberg.courses/askus. So, help out the future generation. Don't worry, we're not going to siphon off the top. But yeah. Okay, so give. Thank you, y'all.
That's true. Thank you for that, Zach. If you want to see how it works, then you can go to Gutenberg.courses/askus and see us. So very cool, very cool. Okay, so let's get into the questions. We have 2 questions that are very similar, and they are around starting projects. From Jim, he says, if I'm starting to build a new website now, is it worth using Gutenberg from the start? And we had another one from a fella named Joe, who said, I'm about to start a project where the Gutenberg editor would be perfect, or Gutenberg at a point where it could be used in production, with the expectation that there may be minor bugs or a few needed changes down the road. Zach, you first. While I think I'm getting a little weird level in my microphone, so I'll let you.
That actually was a little patchy for me. Do you mind trying to repeat that real quick?
Yeah. So the first question was from Jim. If I'm starting a new website, how is it worth using Gutenberg from the start? And the second is from Joe, and it says, I have a project that would be perfect for Gutenberg. Is it production ready, or will there be minor bugs? With the expectation that.
Okay, I think I got you that time. Thank you. And we are here. There might be a little bit of feedback or delay with the mic, but so the question of, well, first of all, no, this isn't production ready. This isn't production ready until it's in core. So just know that if you're going to do anything with it, which I think you should now, just know that it's not finished and it's changing pretty every other week. They're releasing iterations, and so this last one, which we'll get into, it didn't break anything because they're using a really good backwards compatibility model where even if they change something that will eventually break, which they're allowed to do while they're still building it. So let's just, give them slack for that. But they will allow the previous version of that code to continue to work. So you haven't needed to change too much in the code, but there definitely are things that are changing. Now that's like at a code developer level. So if you're building plugins, that's one thing, and you really got to be mindful of this. And I think the real thing that'll happen is keep doing what you've learned, but right before the 5.0 update, you'll have to revamp stuff to really make sure it's ready for core. And then the question of, should you start building client sites with it? If they're far out, yeah, maybe. Or if they're small, not too intensive, critical projects, that a company and people's salaries are depending on, and it's more, a smaller project, you could probably get away. But again, this is not production until it's in production, which is in core. So just know that you are taking some risks. That said, I'll just throw in my 2 cents. We've both, I think, built around playing little sites with it and stuff, and I feel pretty comfortable using it. I know that there are a few folks that are out there using it live on little things in production, but they're very aware of what may come and what may change. But the other thing too is, as long as you have it working and you don't update it, then it shouldn't break. So you might just want to also be aware, if you are taking that approach, of knowing if there may be breaking changes and stuff like that. So ooh, good questions in the chat, but I'll just stop there because I'm rambling. I hope that helps. What about you, Joe? Go ahead and build in production now.
And I think maybe my microphone issues are resolved. Do I sound better?
I think it sounded good what you just said. So
okay, cool. I'll keep an eye. I got some sweet. I don't know how to use it. So I'll keep an eye on it too. Here, just to make sure that I think probably when my mic hits a certain level, I get a little patchy. So everything that Zach said, it's not production ready, but I also know people who are using it in production. So, again, just kind of keep an eye on it. Definitely have a staging, test things out. I'll be putting the plugin on my personal staging site, and that has like 15, 14 years of content. So I'm very excited to see what happens there. and using it for client sites, it's definitely worth having the conversation with your client. Just let them know, hey, there's this change coming to the WordPress editor. Um, there's this change coming to the WordPress editor, and you should be aware of it. I want to see if we can do something with it. So, yeah. So I think that uh, I wouldn't use it in production yet, but I would definitely start testing it. So, Zach, you just posted a question in here about the sense of when 5.0 will roll out. So I'll deflect to you on that, and I'll throw in my thoughts next.
Sure. So first of all, hey Tim, what's up, brother man? How's it hanging? Good question. Of course, unfortunately, what we're going to go on is kind of already public record stuff. I don't know that we have, or I have seen at least a different inside take than what was kind of laid out. So two thoughts on this. One is at the State of Word, Matt was like around 18 iterations, which if they're going every 2 weeks, you could cut per iteration. You can kind of imagine what that would take. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 20 iterations. So that's kind of the timeline we have, right? If we wanted to map that to a potential date of when the best estimate is. But I'll also say that my personal feeling is this is not going into core until it's done. So if like the extreme scenario of like it wasn't ready till October, I don't think they're going to roll in something that they know might break or not work with migrations or not work with existing sites. So while that doesn't give, I think, the best, like it's going to be April 20th and it'll be out and live. But what can we really do? Except I know that these iterations are going quick and they're doing a ton. So at least tracking all the development stuff, there's a hustle happening. So I wouldn't be surprised if the estimates that he gave in State of the Word aren't too far off. But again, it's not going to happen until it's done. And when that, I think it could be like an extra 2 to 3 months than what folks had initially, or what is in the State of the Word. Wouldn't surprise me. But I just want to give these folks grace period to, get everything right. So that's my word on it. I hope that helps, Tim. I'm curious what your thoughts are, or throw up in the chat if you've heard anything otherwise.
Yeah, I've heard some thoughts that it's most likely, like maybe it'll be feature complete in April and not necessarily like ready until June or July. I suspect that they will probably. I think, did Birgit say that last week? She might have mentioned that on the last chat. And that sounds like a reasonable thing. They're definitely going to want to test WordPress.com and a bunch of other places first before they roll into it. So, yeah. So that's my thoughts. Sorry for the microphone issues I'm having. I'm gonna see if I can get these all like live. I guess that's like the perils of doing a live show. So the other question that I have written down in this document is also related to 5.0. I think to avoid when it comes time to upgrade. So, what are some things that we should definitely look out for when 5.0 comes out?
Oh, bejeez.
Again, I'll
Hold
toss that
on
to
to
Zach.
something. I don't know. So here's what I think the rough scenario is going to be. It's just going to work. It's going to take all your existing content and it's going to port it over into Gutenberg, which if you've just been using a standard, the standard content editor, maybe a few WYSIWYG or a few short codes in there, it should just work. Like that's one of the things that they've been doing a lot of work on, is not just building a feature, but throwing crazy stuff at it, running sites through it, checking to see that that's going to work, right? So that's a huge thing, and it should just work. Now, if you have some crazy ACF or custom field setup, then what it should do is not load Gutenberg, because your templates aren't going to match. There's not good, like if you build something with ACF, there's a way to technically transition all that to blocks, but in your template, it's still going to say the field here, and it's not going to say the content, which is what you want to get all the blocks in. So you don't actually want that scenario of it working and transferring all that over. You want to manually do some work and get ready for that. But I think that, and I really hope, and hopefully as it expands, we'll get some more folks with knowledge of what's going on with ACF and some of these other ones, because I know that they're working hard to prepare for this. But it should be a pretty smooth transition into blocks, and then maybe needing to update your template code and maybe train people on how to do stuff. But the places I think we'll see bugs, right, are just weird content scenarios that haven't been thoroughly tested or figured out or found out. But I imagine running it through as many sites as they hope to or plan to, that this will come to light. So I think that that's where we're going to see that. I don't think it's going to be a thing where like, hey, I tried to add this block and save it and it doesn't work. This feature is broken, right? I think we're going to be past that, but it may be in this migration issue that we may see a little bump or two, and why it's important to test, right?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember here is that, when Gutenberg comes out, we'll stay, or when 5.0 comes out, won't have any issues. But definitely test a lot. The back end is changing. The fundamental way that data is stored is not. So I just think that's something to keep in mind, that test a lot, server and like that, and definitely be mindful of like the real big customizations that you make. But if you're storing data, if you're doing things the WordPress way, and it's going to fundamentally change. And also keep an eye out for news from other plugin developers like ACF or CMB2 or Beaver Builder, because they're all going to have their own different update schedules.
Yeah, that's a good one. You should definitely start reaching out to them or following them. We're going to do what we can actually to see who some of these bigger names we could try to get on the show, and we could ask their questions live. But we also, want to give them time to get some work done on all that too, because it's still in development. Joe, I had a question here I could throw out, which, if that's all right with you, I know we have a couple in the queue. So with 2.2.0, a couple new things came out. So there are two questions here, which is one is around backwards compatibility, and then one is in terms of new features, particularly what's up with this nested blocks new block. So backwards compatibility has been handled really interestingly. So there's two examples here. I'll just kind of throw up in the chat here, like editable is one of the components, and that's being changed to being rich text, just for clarity and things like that. Oh, it won't let me post HTML. Okay, I won't post that. I can't post links or HTML. So there are some things that names are changing, right? And that makes sense to have an editable component be a rich text component, which is really just like tiny MCE under the hood with React and stuff like that. So that's a cool one. There's also like the way we figured out whether a block was in focus so that you could pop open or activate your inspector controls in the sidebar area. That has changed a little bit, the language and code behind that. So in both of these scenarios, they have kept the former way still working with it, which I think is so rad and so considerate, and kind of following along some of these WordPress standards, right? Because ultimately the breaking changes, and I know people will argue with this, shouldn't matter until it gets into core. Once it gets into core, then you really have to be concerned about breaking changes. But they've been so thoughtful about it, even during development, which as like a course developer or someone who's bleeding edge and trying to get their plugin ready, it's super helpful not to have to go fix everything right away just because in this like 2-week cycle something else was released. That makes a ton of sense, and we want to change it, but we don't have to. So they're doing like these changes will last for 2 or 3 more iterations, right? Which will be what, 6 weeks or something. That's plenty of time to go back and change your code and things like that. So backwards compatibility, hats off to you folks who have been doing a mighty fine job, even in development, because it would be so much easier. Put yourself in their place to be like, let's just break it. Let's just fix it, do it right, and keep going, right? But they're being considerate of that. So yeah, that's the one. And then the other is the nested blocks. So we finally have nested blocks. And I think that's pretty exciting, because we were saying in our first episode, Joe, right? Like that's going to be a game changer, and it's hard to be a true page builder unless you have that.
Even just like, I don't have the ability to do multiple columns. You're going to have it's still going to be like a lackluster experience. So, that is I think that's very exciting. I don't want to reiterate everything you just said because I agree with everything you just said. So
Yeah, so nested blocks, honestly, I haven't dug into them super deep. I've just dug in enough to see that you could basically create a block that you could define what they're calling columns, I believe, or nested block areas where
Mhm.
you can add other blocks into. So this is super cool because now a plugin developer can make like a 3-column block or a 2-column block or like a featured block that has certain styling applied to it, right? Because the cool thing about this is that your styling is going to go to the back end where the editor is and the front end at the same time. So you can create these really cool scenarios. And I think that that's going to be a lot of fun and looks pretty straightforward, just like the rest of the block technology to set up. So what I haven't dug into enough is, can you, and I assume that you can, well, actually, I'm pretty sure that you can, throw a block out that has default blocks already in place, and you could add others and customize that. But I don't know, they have like block templates, how far you could set up a nested block with its features. But I just thinking aloud here, I think that
yeah,
all
yeah,
this is possible. But like I said, a lot of it's come in quick. So trying to stay up to date on everything myself.
yeah. So I think so. The updating my course now that they're merged in, you have the columns block, and in each of those columns you can create block areas. So you're creating a column of block. You can do a reusable block with the columns block yet. I think that's coming, but I think they disabled it in order just to get a working feature into the beta. And again, this is another reason that Gutenberg isn't, because they say it's not production ready. They can turn things on or off if they decide, like, hey, uh, this thing that we really want to test in at a huge level, like in the plugin, we're going to disable this for the time being. So that's just another kind of aside for why it might not be production ready. And then, but the cool thing about the columns block, right, is you can now create your own column, modify it for plugins and stuff like that. So it's very cool. It looks pretty nifty so far, and I think they're using CSS Grid, or maybe they plan to use CSS Grid in the Prodigy version. So it'll be very minimal, kind of unintrusive CSS as well.
Mwah! Mwah! Just feels
So,
good when you get it right.
yeah, absolutely. So on that note, we had another question from Joe about how mature the Gutenberg editor is. My quick test felt like maybe the interface was buggy. That could be my lack of experience with it. We're definitely going to see production or anything yet. The team is working as quickly as possible to fix as many things as possible, while also adding in, major functionality. Uh, so we are definitely going, also making a lot of improvements on the interface. So they're doing user testing to see, like, does this thing work here? Does this thing work better somewhere else, and stuff like that. So let's see. Is it I know I'm getting cut off again. Is this better? I know exactly why too. And it's Google Chrome, go figure. So why don't I want to bounce out of this and come back in Safari?
Okay. Will that work? I will try to keep. Hold on. Which of the questions are we on now? To the bugginess of the experience, or is it feature complete?
We're on the last one that I posted before yours, and I'm going to host as well, so that we don't.
Cool.
Yeah.
I hope you all are enjoying us playing around with learning live chat as we go, because I sure am. So sorry for the noise or for the bugginess with Joe's. We're going to get this all fixed up. But let's get back into this question. So in quick testing, I felt that the interface was buggy. All right. In my personal opinion, I haven't had, or in my experience, I haven't had any feelings of it being buggy, because to me, buggy means that like I try to click on something and I have an expected behavior and that expected behavior doesn't work. So like if I was going to add a block and I click to add a block, it doesn't get added. So I haven't had any of those experiences where something was truly buggy to me. But what I have found a bunch of them, and I'm going to say this with kindness, is that it hasn't been for me always the most clear UI or user experience, right? And so to differentiate between them, one would be I know what the expected behavior I think should be, and I'd go that and it doesn't work. I'd say that's more buggy. But the user experience is more, I'm like, I want to do this, or I think that this should happen, but this isn't happening. And that's more a matter of when you dig into it, there isn't a break in the functionality. It's working how it's supposed to, but maybe how it was built is not the intuitive way that you would want to use it. So for that, I've definitely found that was the experience, especially earlier on. And they've made some changes. Like before, I don't remember, in one version you had to like click publish and then something popped out and then you had to select publish again and click publish again, or a workflow more like that. And now you just click publish and it publishes. So these kind of things they're working on. And I know that some of the stuff with how a block works is here. Then you have what's called the inspector control along the side with other options. Oh, are we still live? Let me see. I think so. And I found some weird inconsistencies there, or just like different behavior than I would necessarily want to have. So yes, I do believe that that has been a thing. But what I'll also say is that they're working on this and they're testing and they're rolling out UI changes. So you have a design team that's working on this and a dev team that's spinning along, and there's a lot of weaving parts. So I'd say come back to it now that they've actually released a new thing. And I'm curious, the person who asked this, if you have the same question or same issues now that they've done another iteration on it. But I definitely think in the coming iterations, it's going to get so smooth and it's going to get so butter and it's going to be just like, mwah. And if it's not, get up on GitHubs. We talked last time about how to track all these changes and go through them. And like, if you look at a lot of them, I've just been asking questions. So I'm just like, is this going to work? What about this? Am I completely bonkers, or should this do this? And sometimes I am. Yes, it's true. But other times there's been good response. So this is a very open process. And if something's not working how you think it should, jump in there and get involved with that conversation. I've found them pretty receptive. Just be nice. Joe, do we have you back, buddy?
Maybe. So my browser is no longer automatically adjusting the gain on my microphone, which is what the problem was essentially. So maybe we'll see if it's better. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay, but I did come in and catch the end of Zach, what you were saying. Just be nice. If you do see issues, it's been like a super open process. So yeah, definitely give your feedback. It's what I've been telling people on Twitter too with the user tips. You know, I'll post a user tip and somebody will say respond kind of snarkily. We'll say, and you know, I'll just recommend, hey, you know, if you have this feedback, open an issue on GitHub and they will respond to it.
Yeah. GitHub issue ninjas. Merge. Oh, and alarm. Okay. Where are we, Joe? I know we have some Devy ones here being asked live. Are there some other in the store that we need to get to first?
I have gone through the ones that I had in the Google Doc. I'm going to double check that people haven't submitted any more since I stopped looking. But go ahead and answer the kind of developer-y ones.
Okay. First of all, Joe, so cool that you're hanging out here. We get to see you and say hi, and we answered your question. I hope that was helpful. Looks like it was. Very cool. Okay, let's come back to my buddy Tim, my main man. Was that who asked the next one? Did we talk about React being locked in? So I answered this in the chat. Let me just throw it on the video here. So the JavaScript framework of choice discussion is over. And here's a recap of how that went down. They built the whole thing entirely in React in large part because that's what was coming out of Calypso and kind of made sense. Then there is a very open discussion of should we use Vue or all these others, or what about Preact, or what about vanilla JavaScript? And then the discussion of should we actually not use one of those, but create an abstraction layer and then do whatever framework we want behind it. But when you want to use it, you call WP something instead of just straight React. So that happened. And then Matt wrote that licensing blog post. And if you don't know about that, like go do some searching for Matt React article. I'm sure that'll pull it up. And basically it blasted React for not having opening enough licensing that a software company like Word or like a open source software like WordPress could use it. And this was after Linux did that. And after that, they changed it within 2 weeks. And what happened was the whole discussion of should we change was really like, what are the strong enough arguments now for us not to continue building it in how we already have? And they were really live and open and great discussions and a little bit of bashing, but overall pretty good. And they just kept going with React. And because there's no licensing issue and none of the other reasons to switch it out were compelling enough, I guess this is my take on it, that it is now in there. Now, that said, how it's in there, you're never going to call React in your code. In fact, you're going to call wp.createElement instead of React create element or something like that because it's abstracted. Now, they've also abstracted Redux. So we have state management in addition to React abstracted in there. And there's a whole bunch of complexities to all this, but it's pretty sweet because if Redux breaks or something, they need to change. It's a pretty small library that they can manage forking it and doing that themselves. If React, for some reason, changes their licensing in the future, we could just keep the version that was already open and fork it ourselves. And also, if they introduce changes that break or we don't want to have or ruin or destroy backwards compatibility, we could take it and fork it. Now, I would not want to build React from scratch, and none of these developers would have to. But I think what would happen is, if that were to be the case, they'd probably be able to manage forking React and doing something to resolve that issue, because ultimately React isn't going to grow that big. Like, it solves a certain problem, and then you get other tools on top of it that help extend it. So I feel pretty comfortable with this. I mean, maybe they might switch to another library, but I would not want to, and I don't see it being likely that they're just going to one day be like, all right, let's just switch to Vue, and all of the architecture that's abstracted is going to work, and on the back end we'd like hook everything together so it basically pretends to be React. I don't see that happening. I think we're pretty much locked in, and if something happens, the core team is going to have to fork React and do what they need to maintain compatibility until it can be remerged or something like that. So a long-winded thing and history lesson there, but hopefully that gives us a pretty good read on where we are going forward. So expect everything else to be rebuilt in React. Just a heads up. There's already a fork on the customizer using the React version of Word, or the WordPress version of React, and listing pages and all that stuff is probably going to soon follow. Oof.
Very cool. Thank you for that history lesson, Zach.
Sorry, I can talk it, man. I hope that was helpful, Tim.
I mean, I was going to add the same stuff in because it's important to know that when it looked like the licensing for React might change, the WordPress or the WordPress core or open source project team was ready to say, okay, we're going to abandon React. And then Matt wrote that blog post, and I won't say that it was because Matt wrote the blog post, but the chain of events closely follow that sort of timeline. So React is pretty settled science at this point. We're moving forward full steam ahead with that.
And Tim made a really good point here. He's like, that all makes perfect sense, but we never heard anything from Matt after that post, right? He put React and Facebook on blast. They changed it, and then there was no follow-up like, hey, community, now we're going to use React. And it totally wasn't. I had to stalk people in camps and be like, hey, you're on core. What's going on, man? So good one. Man. Good one. Oh, funny. All right, you have one here. Joe, do you want to take a stab at this one? I think this might need some unpacking or figuring out maybe what they're going after.
Sorry, what was that? Which one?
Okay. We have a question here saying, please provide the settings in Gutenberg admin page to enable the editor for custom post type, categories, and custom taxonomies as well. Thanks. And I just love this question because it seems like we have the influence or the ability to make this happen, which I'm just going to pretend we do. So, Joe, can we solve this problem for this person?
Can we personally? No. I mean, theoretically, yes. If we decided today that we wanted to start contributing to the WordPress open source project. Certainly, we can do that. Um, but no, this is a request for the Gutenberg team. It looks like there was probably a mix-up. I guess our domain authority has become confusing.
Oh
So
no,
yeah,
does
so
that mean
I'm
we're
just
gonna start getting like pull requests or like issues on Gutenberg through our Q&A? Hey, why'd you guys do this?
yeah.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. So I posted this one because I wanted to reiterate again that if you have a suggestion, go to the WordPress or the Gutenberg GitHub repository. We'll link it in the description for this. We've referenced it enough. And post your suggestions there. Um, they take requests and suggestions and bug fixes, and what you're requesting doesn't mean it'll definitely get merged in, but they're certainly giving you a platform and a voice to do that stuff. So um, to the person who submitted this request, definitely post this request over on the GitHub.
Yeah, and I'll just throw out because I think to unpack this and like answer it as best as we can, because first that's important that we need to identify where our authority reaches and where it doesn't. So the question though is, can you have Gutenberg work for custom post types, categories, and custom taxonomies? So this is a really interesting question because one, it should work for custom post types. Like I've been able to get it working and I think it's in the course and I think it should be fine. So I don't think you should have any problems if you set it up correctly, it replacing the editor everywhere. Now that said, having Gutenberg blocks on a category, when you're editing a category by default has what, 3 fields? It has its name, it has its slug, and its description, right? So those, I guess, could become blocks, but really if you wanted to have custom fields, this is probably going to be a plugin area, y'all, because this is not something categories do by default. Categories don't have like a custom fields UI. So I think don't expect to see like blocks everywhere right away, just because that's not how the underlying architecture works. So I think that that might be something that, while that could go in a Git, well, yeah, just to address these, it should already work for custom post types. And I wouldn't expect it in categories and taxonomies, but you could certainly try posting or asking that there. So maybe this isn't something you fully need to take onto the GitHub boards, and that might be a helpful answer, but not sure. I hope I unpacked that correctly.
Nice, very nice. Thank you for unpacking that a little bit. Because I thought that was the case. I thought everything you just said was the case, and I thought maybe I just, I haven't really tried to code too much with Gutenberg yet. So, maybe I missed something. I'm glad that's not the case, though.
So we've got one more here from Mike McAllister. What's up, Mike? Hope you're still hanging around. This was a great question. So the question is, will we be able to extend core blocks without rewriting or copying all the code for that block? For example, say you wanted to add a few extra options to a core block. Now, the short answer to this is yes. The long answer is it might not always be the best thing to do. So Mike, if you have some particular instances, some use cases that you're thinking, post them up here and let us know, because it's going to depend. So let me try to like paint a few scenarios. So one is you have a normal, what's called the rich text component, and there was formerly called the editable component. It's just, a little WYSIWYG area for you to type paragraphs and stuff like that. So this by default, I think, comes with like bold, italic, and strike through, or like a few basic editing things. And let's say you wanted to add your own custom, he followed up here. Okay, that's a little bit different. And yeah, that'll work. I'll circle back to that. So let's say you want to add a few extra editing options to that plugin. You could tap in and extend what tools are put there. So that's like a very simple example. But if you really wanted to overhaul a block and really begin customizing it, I think you'd actually find that it's easier to rebuild it from scratch. So while they are, and by the way, all what I'd call like the extensibility stuffs of Gutenberg, which isn't building something from scratch, but it's hooking in and hijacking this or changing that there using, using hooks. This is not fully fleshed out, so I'm not ready to fully like teach or speak too deeply on it, but it is possible and more is coming. But I've also, this question was raised with some core devs, and the response was, yes, we'll extend some things, but really it won't always make more sense to do. Now, that said, Mike posted up here, I thought columns would be an interesting block to extend. And yes, but it's so easy to create a new block from scratch that, and they give you a lot of the components and things for it to do like these. So you have a block that's a finished product and you can extend that, but you also have components, which are all the different fields that are used to make every block. And these components you can mix and match already and build your own block without having to worry about extending. So I think in the case of nested blocks, what you'd be doing is creating your own nested blocks from scratch and customizing those rather than trying to extend every single instance of when the core block was being used, because then you also get into an issue of like, if you extend it, that's everywhere, or you have to write crazy conditional code to only apply at certain places. So I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now. I hope that was helpful, Mike. It's a really good question, and one that like I don't know enough about fully because they haven't finished the library of extensions. So there's more coming, but we don't fully know what all of them are. But I do know, I'll just add this as a last thing, that the team has been pretty responsive in terms of if the community thinks that there's a strong use case for why something should be extendable, then they'll do it. And I've seen a little bit of this in action. So I think that if there are places that you think strongly about it, then I'd suggest this is something, get up on the G Hub boards and holler at them about, because I think that it's valuable. And again, be nice, and they probably want to hear that feedback. There's so much they're building. This is a big project.
Crazy. It's crazy. So, awesome. That's all the questions that I have. And I think I don't see any more submitted via the chat. So, Zac, do you have anything else queued up that you had that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think that pretty much covers it for me. Let's look over the boards here again. I think that we got the ones in the live chat. I mean, I have tons of questions I could ask myself, but we'll save it for the community questions here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do last call for questions now, and then that'll give the 20-second delay and folks enough time to post. And in that delay time, I will once again thank our sponsor, Give. They are, I can't say this enough. I feel like I'm a broken record, but they're very supportive of the community. They offer a lot of really great features. Like I said, they have a free plugin. You can find them over at givewp.com.
Just go there now, folks. Just do us a favor. Just pop it open. Hit them up.
Yep, or on Twitter at GiveWP.
Follow them there too.
Yeah,
y'all use Twitter? Go follow GiveWP. Good stuff to do. Sorry, Joe. I'm going to keep interrupting because I feel passionately about this too. We're not just taking money from whoever, folks. We care about this stuff. I want you to know that. Sorry. Go on.
No, you're absolutely right. Like if we're going to be here, talking about how great a company is, we want to believe it. So, Give is definitely one of those companies we believe in. I'll tell you what, but actually before I set up the donation page on gutenberg.courses/askus, I had never used Give before. So I was coming in fresh, never used it before. And I've got to say, like, I'll give myself that I'm a savvier user than most. I have a lot of experience setting up plugins, but this was super easy to set up. I didn't have to worry about like building a form first. I didn't have to worry about adding like crazy API keys for anything. I just connected I didn't even have to connect anything. I put in an address for PayPal. I set up this form. They have so many options that make it super easy. And they offer like just a ton of reporting too. So you can do donor management, and they have and this is all in the free plugin. Like everything
it's
on
free the free plugin. Come on.
But you know what? If you need more, they've got paid add-ons too, like recurring donations, which is great because you don't want, I don't know. I wouldn't want to leave that to like PayPal or Stripe. Like
No, and you
it's
know why you
yeah.
don't? Because then they have to go in and they have to cancel in PayPal, and you got to handle another thing. I'll tell you, I've run a hosting company for students, run off of recurring subscriptions, and it's a nightmare not to deal with good software that handles that. So the other thing is people are generous and they want to help, and they don't want to come to your site or you forget. So you get those good people on the recurring subscriptions, and it's going to make your company better. It's going to increase the feeling of giving in the people. That's an amazing plugin. I'm ruining the B-roll here. I know I am, but it's important, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of gushing at this point, but definitely check them out. I mean, if you wanna build like I have a Patreon account for like my podcast, and I'm thinking about moving it to Give because
Oh.
Patreon takes like an extra 5% off the top.
Wait, hold on.
Um,
Does GiveWP take money off the top when you get
no,
donations?
no, the only fee that you
No.
pay is for the credit card processor, which Give has no control over. So, you know,
Look at
I'm
that. Nothing
I'm
off the
leaving money on
top.
the table using a third party instead of using Give. So, but in any case, check them out. They're so great. I can't say enough nice things about
Yeah,
them. And
can't.
and um and these and further, it's a lot easier to make these events happen thanks to their sponsorship.
Oh yeah.
So cool, very cool. So I don't see any more questions. I think we went over the 20 seconds. Um, as we're wrapping up, do I sound better? Am I still cutting out? Did I
I gotta say,
figure this out like at the end?
since you came on, it's funny, right when you said that there was a little bit of a delay, but overall it sounded better. The audio quality is a little different, but it's coming in clear and not delaying as much. So
All right,
we're gonna
perfect.
need a separate section just on equipment for live streaming, right?
Yeah. I got a cool new thing, and I thought I had it down, and then Chrome decided that, oh, we're gonna actually like mess with this for you. Thank you, Chrome. So all right, well, thank you everybody for tuning in live, or if you're watching the recording afterwards, thanks so much for watching. Our next event is what, March 2nd?
Yeah,
uh,
and we have a special guest.
yeah, do we want to like spill the beans right now, or do
Can
we want
I
to like
do it?
wait? Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it. Yeah.
We've got one of my bestie developer friends from Human Made, Matthew, coming on the show. And Matthew is, I just love the guy. He's learned JavaScript through WordPress. He's done React projects. He works at Human Made, which is possibly, and I don't think anybody could argue this, one of the top companies you could work for on the planet. I mean, amazing. So he works there. They're doing creative stuff. They were the ones pioneering API stuff. And now he's already worked with Gutenberg on some projects. So he's going to come in and give us some, is this ready for production? What are the things that you've hit here? What do you think about extending this? We talk from more the educator perspective. And this is going to be a hardcore dev coming on, talking about his experience building a production site with Gutenberg and beginning to think about how we address clients with this and what we could take on and what we could do. So wicked excited for that.
I mean, not to mention a hardcore dev in the dev space, in the enterprise space. So like, this isn't just like I'm building a site for myself. Should I use Gutenberg? This is like I'm building a website for like Disney. Like, when should we do it? Like, So, I should disclaimer. I don't know if Disney's a client of Human Made. I just like Disney a lot, so they're always the example I use.
I think maybe an example could be a major newspaper or something like that. But I don't know. They could do Disney. They could do anything. I love those folks.
Yeah, so if you guys have questions, March 2nd will be a great time to get them answered, because you'll have us, but more importantly, you'll have the guys from Human Made coming on talking about all of the things that you might have questions about. So
Especially that enterprise, you're right. Like
yeah,
the big boys, the big
yeah,
girls,
yep,
the big
absolutely.
modes.
So cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Until next week, go build something awesome with Gutenberg.
Yeah. Keep on learning. Be nice. Enjoy it. Have fun, y'all. Thanks
Be
for hanging out.
nice. Bye, guys.